Well, folks, this is a very special session. I think it's the first time, Jerry, we've actually had a tech stream, and you're the first person to present a tech session at this event. We've been running these sorts of events for years, but now we've got enough tech people in our community who are interested in finding out more about the tech side, and particularly the Adobe Admin Console. And so while people are jumping into the room, we've got Helen Lacey with us too. Hi, Helen. How are you going?
Hey, familiar face, some friendly faces there. Hey,
There we
Bernie.
go. Speaking of tech gurus, are you well, Helen?
I'm good, thank you. I'm on mute as well. Hello, everybody.
It happens. Good. And so Jerry's very excited. We've had a bit of a change of plans. The wonderful Richard Turner-Jones was going to be moderating this session from Brisbane, but he's come down sick. He's got a migraine. He just can't look at a screen at the moment. So I'll be taking over the moderation just to help get things started. So thank you, those people who have joined us already as tech gurus. And we're looking forward to finding out a bit more about what this session's all about. Jerry, just before we get started, while we're waiting for a couple more people to join us, tell us a bit about your background. How did you end up at Adobe?
Oh, geez, that's a long story.
Keep it short though, Jerry. Keep it short, short version.
Well, it's always been sort of on the IT side of things. And I think, I joined Adobe when we were actually at the beginning of actually introducing that name user licensing model. So need a lot of help to try and get our customers to convert over, moving away from that sort of, installation with serial keys. I think that's something we, probably remember a little bit how difficult that was. But so that was the sort of time I joined Adobe, and I've been here since, and there's been so many changes, so many things happening. Our enterprise features in the admin console always improving each year. So, and today I'm going to have the opportunity to tell you a bit more about what's going on in the actual admin console.
Which is
it's
great.
Good to a few more people joining.
And of course, those people who are joining are very much likely to be IT administrators. They're either IT admin from a school or from a district. They're looking after the Adobe Admin Console. You are so important. The school could not function without you guys. You are one of the most important roles in the school, and I hope you realize that. Just like in our education team, we're full of educators who are teachers and do the presentation. So we couldn't function without Jerry, who does a lot of the behind the scenes and the technical stuff. We very much rely on Jerry and our team, and we're very grateful that he's with us. So Jerry, I'm going to throw it over to you now to start your session. I'm going to disappear and just monitor the chat for a little while, and go well.
Well, good. Thank you, Tim, and welcome everybody. Yes, as Tim mentioned, this is the first tech session that we've had in the Education Conference. So let me share my screen, and you can sort of talk a little bit more about what's going on. So yes, well, as we all know, the Admin Console really is your one-stop shop, really, to manage users, also provide like this, prepare the software packaging, but above everything else, look, there's loads and loads of features in there that we integrate that actually connects with your identity management, and to try and make your experience using Adobe software very, very smooth. Right. And so what I'm going to be doing today is talking a little bit more about some of the best practices that we have in the education space. I mean, obviously, Adobe has software that can be used across all the different sort of verticals and commercial, like also in education, in government, etc. And we know in education, in some cases, especially in the K-12 side of things, there are a couple of additional features that we do have in there. So we're going to try and explore some of these, and just looking at some of the people with us at the moment. Yep, there's a bit of a mix there with those of you looking after the K-12 side of thing, as well as higher education. So, okay, here we go. Now, as I was saying, the admin console, I mean, probably this is probably not unfamiliar to you. You probably use it now. I'm not sure if you're all admins or you want to understand a bit more about what the actual admin console can provide for you. But here is a few things that often we don't actually sort of see, or we often just like move on to just the packaging, how to manage users, etc. But I want to talk to you about a few areas of information that the actual console can provide for you if you have access to it. For example, in the console itself, you now can see the actual contract information, right? So, and from that as well, you can actually nominate an actual contract admin. This is a feature we didn't have before, but this is now available on console. So it's good to actually have at least an extra person there that can actually look at these details. And of course, we have an account tab. So what I'm going to do while I'm sort of talking through this, I'm also going to be showing you what a live console kind of looks like, so you can actually sort of refer to what I'm talking about. So now looking at the actual account details, it'll provide you information about your actual contract. It'll give you information like all the products that actually comes included in the agreement that you have with Adobe, and you'll have dates like your anniversary date, the actual or the contract end date as well. And another thing, something that actually often gets overlooked here is the actual organization type. So basically, the first time an admin goes into the console, you may have had the choice to choose, look, are you a higher education institution, or you're K-12 or other, or sometimes labeled as non-profit, right? So this is important to make sure that you actually have the correct classification, because in some cases, for example, in K-12, there are particular features that actually come specific for your organization. So then again, if it wasn't selected correctly, that's okay. That can be fixed, right? All you got to do is actually just go and open up a support case in the admin console, and the support team will be able to help you reset that. So by doing that, then you'll make sure you get your correct products that actually is for the correct organization. So just to give you a bit of an idea what that looks like, I'm going to drag over a screen that kind of looks at your live console. So this is one of the demo consoles that we have. It probably doesn't have all I have there, but what I'm talking here is the account section. So by clicking on this tab here, it'll give you this information about your actual agreement. And once this actually comes up, we'll be able to tell you, you can see this information. Internet is not doing too well at the moment. Let me just do a quick refresh. Great. So get that out of the way. All right.
Jerry,
while that's happening there in the background, just move that over.
Sorry, Jerry, while you're refreshing there, I just want to let everyone in the audience know that have joined us live that using the chat feature, it'd be good if you want to throw in some questions for Jerry that we can pose maybe towards the end of his session, or if he's happy to be interrupted with some key questions, it's a good opportunity to throw them into the chat.
Yes, great. If you have any questions along the way, please put it in the chat there, and I'll answer that as I go along. Or if there's something specific that you want to actually look at, please share with me and we can focus on that. We've got the, all right, here we go. It is now showing. Accounts. All right, here we go. So it will look a little something like this. Okay. Here we go. So you'll have the contract information, all the products that actually in the contract, and the dates here. Now, the organization detail I was talking about here, this is where you'll find out, look, have you got the correct organization type? And other than that, some of the other things that are actually have been added to the console, and it is actually quite important to actually update if you haven't done so, are some of the contact details. Now, there's a bit of information here. If we click on the settings, right, under privacy and security, you'll notice there's a few fields here that is often overlooked, right? I mean, I do recommend that you do as an administrator, go in there, please put the correct information, because having the correct contact details here is important, because if there's any important update that relates to security, for example, we want to make sure we're talking to the right people. And often we forget that if you don't put the right details in there, they will just go on what the last contact was in the system. And then this important information may not get to the correct people on time. So, and I will be providing the actual slides that I'm sort of showing there. It's got all the links to all the different places for more information, but on your console, you can see here, all this information can be updated and should be updated. So that's one of those things. And also on the console, it provides you a whole bunch of other reports and insights that's available to you as well, that can help you monitor your license trending for the insights or for the different products that you do have. And also reports is there for the admin to actually stay up to date with all the actual content logs, storage reports, identity, etc. if you want to make sure that you're actually tracking and monitoring your environment. And the last thing there to actually sort of mention, there's been a new feature that's been added to the console called domain enforcement. And I'll be talking about that in a little bit further down the track. But that gives you also now ability to report on finding out personal accounts that are actually using your actual domain, your claim domain. And we'll find out a bit more about why that's important. So that's a bit of an overall, just a few glance on some of the details that you need to update on the console when you can. And now looking at some of the other things that the console will provide you, it will often have notifications. Now you'll find that often we all recognize that sort of notification bell. That's in the top right corner of your console. There'll be a bell icon there. So whenever there's an actual exclamation or some sort of indication, that'll tell you how many unread messages you would have had, right? I mean, I would suggest, I'm not sure how many of you guys actually go in there to in the console, looking at all the information in there, and often it's probably set and forget and you move on. But it is important every now and again, do look at the overview, because it'll always give you updates on what's going on in the console, new features, special offers, and sometimes as well, if you have some deployment or provisioning options in place, like product requests, they will be showing up on your console. So just to give you an idea what that looks like again. So if you go in overview, you'll see a number of updates that pop up on your console, and you can just kind of just browse through them just by sort of toggling through. It can give you sort of like take a tour. If you got new admins on joining the organization, they want to get a bit of a refresher, you can actually sort of just step through that and get that information. It will always remind you of some of the new features, like making sure your single sign-on, etc., is all set up, and deployment of features, etc. So you'll find that here, all this new information, and right at the top there, this is where you'll get these warnings, or actually alerts. And also by looking at that, another thing that you may not sort of realize, you can actually check on Adobe's status on services as well. So by clicking on this icon here, it'll give you different service alerts that's happening throughout Adobe. And you'll get live information here by just going to the status, into this live website here. Actually, just moving on. And like I mentioned about the actual special offers, a lot of times they will just show up in the product menu, right? And this is actually going to be related specifically with your organization, classification that we spoke about before. For example, in K-12, you got Adobe Express for free. And in a lot of cases, some schools may not even know it's there. So if you actually do look at that, pay attention in the actual product tab here. And in this demo console, you won't really see it, but sometimes there's special offers and they look a little bit something like this. You'll have the special heading, special offers. You'll show, for example, Adobe Express for K-12, you'll be there, and you're just going to make sure you click the accept button to activate it. And all consoles will have the custom fonts. Custom fonts, for example, is a feature that you have on a console that allows you to upload a specific font that you may want to use or make available throughout your whole organization. And to actually activate that, you actually need to click accept. So it's good to have a look at the console and just check if there's anything there that you need to actually activate or you can take advantage of. So these are some of the things that you have there. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the other deployment or product license provisioning assignment options. And one of them is actually using product request. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later on. But if we now move on to the next thing about managing users in schools and faculties. Now, again, in education, we need to find something that actually suits our environment. And basically that could be quite complex. Some organizations may be managing several consoles, and most probably only using one, and for a standalone school, etc. So we always recommend in these sort of circumstances for education, I would recommend using product profiles so you can actually customize particular setup for your actual users, right? A lot of the times I've seen on consoles, they provision users, you would provision users directly onto the product profiles. I would not recommend actually putting the users, adding the users to the product profiles. I would recommend you use user groups, because further down the line, what will happen if there's any change of products or you need to migrate users or different sets of users, it is easier to actually do it through user groups. And I'll just show you in a second how and why it's easier. Because if you're using product profiles and you're adding users to it, yes, you can do it in bulk using editing a CSV file, etc. But as you know, that can become a bit cumbersome. So by using user groups, you can actually do it with just a few clicks. Now, let me just show you how that works. So if we go into the users here, yes, you'll provision all the users for your particular school, university, or institution, but think of it as how you actually use your actual Active Directory, right? You always use user groups, and then you can actually set it up to break up groups of users such as educators, staff members, or students. So if you create a group and label it accordingly, then you can actually add your users to that group, right? And say, for example, let's just look at this test group here that we call all students. If I go into that group at the moment, as you put all the users in here, rather than then adding them directly into the product that you want to license them for example, like in Creative Cloud or Express or any other product, you then simply use this option here called Assign Product Profiles. And from here, you actually click Assign, and you'll get a selection to basically quickly just select the product you want to assign the user to. For example, it could have just been Acrobat, Express, or Creative Cloud. So that saves you the hassle for having to use an actual CSV file and having to modify that all the time. So this is something that I can see on a lot of consoles that I've worked with. We always put users directly into the product. And when it's time to change, or if there's a migration happening, it takes a lot longer because you'll have to actually physically go into the file, into the actual product. Let's just take this one, for example. You might see a whole bunch of users in here. This demo is not really sort of doing this justice, but if you're managing a school, a university, or an actual faculty, there'll be hundreds of users in here, and you'll have to actually modify that using doing a lot of spreadsheet edits, right? So definitely recommend using user groups and just changing the actual products and upgrading as you need to in this act. Oh, geez, my internet is
Now, Jerry, just while you've got a bit of a pause there, I've just had
I think we sort of get the idea.
Jerry, can you hear me okay? Good. Just, you got me, Jerry?
I can hear you.
Yeah, you're getting a little bit blocky there. So we'll just wait for things to buffer up for you.
Yeah.
I've been recommended to spotlight you. So I'm just going to give that a go right now. I'm just going to jump into your profile on Teams and go spotlight for everyone. And let's see what happens. Let's see if you get a little bit bigger. Let's see. Well, it didn't make any change while you were. Maybe that's changed with other people, but anyway, I've just done that. So while I've got everyone's attention for a second, in the chat, there is a few comments coming through. And
all right, let's...
Jerry, you're covering the first one. Bernie said, I'm curious to see some of the capabilities of the console, which you're already going through. I don't have access myself, he says, but keen to see how we can best manage the experience for learners and educators. So you're kind of doing that already. But Bernie, if there's anything specific that you're interested in finding out about, maybe throw that into the chat later. Roland from the Philippines says, hi, Jerry, is there a reporting feature in the console that enables an organization to see if they are utilizing the use of the license? This has been a frequent question here for schools that I encounter, especially if they want to invest or renew again.
Yes, look, the console is a management console, right? We still recommend you do speak to your IT. They may have a tool that actually monitors utilization, but our console and tools that we do have and features, they do not provide you utilization, but it will give you the insights on your deployment trending, and you can keep track of that. I hope that sort of helps, Roland, but yes, we do not have that yet in terms of utilization on our console right now.
And Roland also has a comment here. I completely agree with using a user group similar to an OU in an Active Directory environment. Faster to implement and execute.
A lot easier to make changes, moving things around, and as time changes, products change, you just do it in a click of a button.
And Bernie's got another comment here. This is great. User groups and profiles is good to know about, as well as custom fonts. Can a branding kit in Adobe Express be allocated to a user group?
Yes, it can. Actually, well, we sort of do it on a top level. You probably in your actual storage feature, your storage management feature, you actually would give permission to the whole of the organization. Pretty much you kind of create one big pool, and each user in each team would use libraries, and that's something that you would then create within the application you're using. So that's the sort of level I would recommend that you do set up, and so that way you kind of open up permission. And because if you got the IT administrator to actually go and separate that, that means they'll be forever going in there to change permissions. So it's probably best that you manage it through the libraries and provide access that way. So you can then reach out to the whole group, or you can actually restrict it.
Thanks, Jerry.
So that would be what I would recommend at this point.
Carry on. I won't interrupt you for the... Oh, actually, Roland's just put in another comment. Would like to know how to enable certain features in the admin console, restrict or give users. Does that make sense to you, Jerry?
To feature to restrict or give access. But I was actually going to be answering one question that Bernie had previously there in terms of, yes, the admin console predominantly has been always a tool that the administrators would be using, right? I mean, getting access to support, etc. But we do have granular access, and that's something that I have spoken to quite a few administrators to actually sort of look into that and leverage. And you probably see that big button down here, requesting expert sessions, and that would be one of the things that we mentioned. I think that would answer your question there, Bernie. Yes, you can actually provide access to resources within the support features here, where you can actually get access to an actual product expert. Doesn't necessarily have to be a technical question, but this could be product related question. So as admins, as administrators, it's good to actually keep an eye out for people who are using products, so they can actually get access to some of these experts. And this is a feature that does exist on the console, and users should request that. So I'll just show you exactly quickly what you can actually do with this. To request an expert session here, if I click on this, yes, you can get technical help, in setting up, like, for example, your single sign-on, any type of deployment option you want to use, or anything about the console itself. But you also have Creative Cloud and Document Cloud resources you can access. So if I was to click on this section here, and which will open eventually, and if we click next, you can pretty much select which Adobe product you actually want to get some help on, and you'll get access to an SME, a subject matter expert, about that particular product, and which is not showing at the moment, unfortunately. But you could select applications like Photoshop, Lightroom, or any of the Creative Cloud applications that you might want to actually talk to someone about. And that drop-down box here, you can see all the different products that's available in Creative Cloud will show up. So it is a function that would be good to assign to a couple of key stakeholders within your organization, where you can actually seek help directly from Adobe. And yes, we can help your admins as well set it up correctly, so that just to ensure that, look, you get the right access, and so they also have the reassurance that you're not going to get into a section that you don't need to go into, for example, like setting the settings of your single sign-on, etc. But yes, you can leverage that. Definitely, it is a feature that should be used. And if you're not an admin, please ask your admin to actually reach out to us, and we can help them through this. So I'm just going to click no here, because I'm not going to cancel. Yes, please discard. Right. And also another thing to actually mention about the actual admin console itself. Look, over time, it has progressed. And for those, this is probably going to only make sense for those that have very large organizations, right? They are the limits for actually the number of users you can actual group now is quite large. I mean, we recommend still under 75,000 users into a particular group before you might start getting a bit of lag, right? But there is a cap. You can't go more than 200,000 users per user group, that is, right? But the console basically can manage any number of users. We don't have an actual cap on the number of users that can be managed through the admin console as a whole. So these are a couple of little things there that you should know about the support, the granular sort of access level of administrators. I mean, there's a quick sort of couple of options there that you can see that you can actually provide certain admins to manage the different areas of the console. So let's move on to some of the other areas. Now, this is a topic that actually might relate to a few of you, like looking at the different identity types that we have within the console. I mean, in the very early days, look, we all started with Adobe IDs. These are actually considered these as a personal account, right? Then we've then evolved, and then now you have enterprise IDs and federated IDs. Now, for most organizations, universities, etc., we do recommend you do use federated ID, because you can actually then streamline the login process with your. There's often the case that a lot of people still have old accounts, a personal account that they've created previously, that's still using the school email or university email, etc. And you get some of these common problems that often get asked. Look, I've purchased my subscription. I don't have access to the actual tools that I actually did purchase, or I've purchased something by accident. And where are all my files, etc.? These are very common questions that we do find that floats around. It probably goes to your help desk, and they have to try and go in and unravel that. One of the first things that I recommend you do for a particular user that has a problem like that, look, just make sure they go and check the status of the actual login they are using, right? You can do that very quickly by just going to accounts.adobe.com. You can go do that directly. If you've got your Creative Cloud desktop app or any of the Adobe products, top right, you'll always notice there is the profile icon that looks like this, right? So simply click on that. And if I go view account or look at the account details, that's pretty much the same shortcut that what I've showed you there. So the first point to actually try and troubleshoot this for your user is just make sure, look, get them to log in and then check the actual plan that's actually attached to that particular login, right? So by doing that quickly, if I just go into plans, have a look there, it will tell me if I'm using the actual proper enterprise licenses here or I'm using my own personal account. This is something that we find that's actually for organizations that's managing thousands of students, etc. This can become a very, very confusing thing and time-consuming thing to actually sort out. But just make sure that, look, if you've implemented single sign-on, let's make sure that that single sign-on box is coming up, so we make sure that they are using the correct account. But also, we've got a few things that can actually help you fix that and prevent this problem from happening. So let's take a look at that. Right. So first of all, yep, single sign-on, good to have in place, especially for a school, university, or a TAFE, a technical college, because you want to make sure the login experience is actual enterprise grade and making sure that it is uniform and streamlined. So with single sign-on, that needs to be set up. So you can leverage also your identity management, and there should be hopefully a lot less calls saying that I've forgotten my password. And more importantly, using the federated setup is you can prevent all these accidental purchases. As federated ID on the console, your user cannot go and add any additional plans to that account. So if someone has actually done that, they most likely are using a personal account that probably has the same email, right? So just make sure this is in place, and that's another quick way of actually just isolating where the problem is actually coming from. Now, I was talking about a feature called domain enforcement before. That is a feature that's been added to the admin console early this year, and that pretty much allows you to isolate and also remove all these user frustration. So if you've got a claimed domain, you can now turn that domain enforcement on. So therefore, no one can actually use your actual email domain as a personal account. So that will make sure that you don't have anyone complaining that they can't get the correct subscription that they've actually signed up for or whatever your organization is providing. So I'm going to have all these links here for you. And just in a nutshell, pretty much there's two stages for actually activating this actual feature. The first stage is to actually stop anyone from this point onwards from actually creating an Adobe ID using your claimed domain, right? So it's good for actually just stopping the problem at this point, right? And then you can enforce the second stage. The second stage, what that will then do is actually then check your whole system, and whoever actually has still got an actual Adobe ID using your actual domain, they will be actually forced, they'll get a notification forcing them to change that personal account to another email address and use, of course, then using a personal email, because if it's a personal account, you want to make sure that it's actually something different to the organizational email. So two stages there. First one, stop the problem. And you probably remember I spoke about an actual report that you can actually run on your admin console to get a whole list of all the different Adobe IDs you have in your console. So that way you can have a bit of a targeted message to get out to your users. And then as a last stage is then to enforce it. Then that way you can actually clean and purge your system. Then everybody will be directed to use the single sign-on federated making sure so they don't have all these accidental purchases with other products as well. So all this information is provided here. Yep.
Jerry, just interrupting
Hello?
you for a second there, just to let you know we've got 10 minutes left. So yeah, just 10 minutes max left.
Yep, that's fine, Tim. Yep, I think we're almost done. So this is the main feature that I would definitely recommend that you actually look into for school, for university, or even a technical college. That will remove a lot of headaches. Right, and a couple of options here for easy deployment or provisioning of licenses. And I've put down a look. Adobe provides a number of ways to actually help organization with provisioning licenses. I mean, probably a lot of you are used to the user sync. We've now evolved also having an Azure connector that sort of plugs in directly into your tenancy. You can use user groups, and another feature that's actually fairly sort of new in some ways and very good, but kind of suits the K-12 environment where they probably do not have the same sort of IT resources to manage all the actual license deployment. So you can actually set that up, and I'll show you can do that in 3 simple steps. But some recommendations in terms of how we can actually facilitate easy license deployment. Higher education, universities, TAFEs, and technical colleges, they are already using user sync and Azure connectors, so that can continue. And the user groups and product assignment straight through the actual user groups that where I've showed you before, that just works well. Now in K-12, I'm going to show you a new feature with using this just-in-time provisioning that you can actually set up in just 3 simple steps. Right, so step number 1, and this rule here also can work for any products that you might want to actually try and set that up for. You'd simply just go and activate the auto assignment feature. So I think best if I show you exactly where to actually see that in the live console. So that will be seeing under the products, and you'll see a number of automation, provisioning automation, and this will be the rule here. So once you go in here to activate it, just simply go and click add a product. And pretty much you select the product that you actually want to manage. And of course, you have the default profile. Let me just click this one, just to kind of give you a quick idea what that actually would do. Okay, it's taking a little while, but look, I'll just move that aside for a second. So pretty much what it actually does, it just helps you actually create an automation process, an automated process for you to actually provide a license to groups of users in your organization, right? And you can assign it to an actual product profile, which normally is your default one. And a great way to use this particular feature is for K-12, for the K-12 sort of sector, because Express is free and can be deployed to everybody. And if I just move to the next screen, so step 2, pretty much, look, you just create an actual auto assignment rule, pick the product that you actually want, and you attach it to the actual user group or organization in your console, right? So pretty much these are the 2 things that you just need to match up in the console, and the rule is pretty much set. So from there, and the last step really is to then decide, look, do you want it to be on demand where you actually allow the user to just get the license as they log in, or the system will automatically still generate a URL for you, a shortcut URL that you can use to distribute if you want to kind of restrict and isolate who you're providing the license to. So this is provided automatically, but if you want something that's free open that everybody or a particular group can get access to, just use the on demand. So that way that will, by however means a person accesses the product, they will get that license automatically. But the URL here as well, look, this will only work for users in your organization. So if that, for whatever reason, gets to an external party, that or someone that shouldn't have received it, look, if they are not a user on your console, they will not be able to get a license, right? And if you've actually provided that URL to a specific group to activate them for a particular project, for example, you can always regenerate that URL and you start from fresh again. So it's very flexible and very easy to set up. So please do have a look at that. There'll be information provided on this as well, but very easy, 3 steps, and you're ready to go. And a couple of updates, really. I mean, mostly for the K-12 sector. So if you're a school that actually have an admin console, you may have heard from the actual keynotes that Express Classroom is now available. And we've run an actual session previously, and I'll provide you a link to the recording where it would actually help you set up what we call the educator role, because the educator role is actually it's a role that's going to be in the console that allows the educator the ability or the privilege to go and create a classroom pretty much in Express, right? So once they've got that set up, pretty much they will also receive some learning materials as well, specifically for educators. And one last thing there to add, look, Adobe Substance 3D is now also available for K-12. So that's something that we do have. We did run a session previously on that. If you actually join our weekly webinars, that actually provides some information about that. And in fact, I think the next session that we're going to be having, we'll be talking about that. I think just to leave you with a couple of dedicated IT resource pages there. I mean, we've got 2 dedicated sections for information for IT administrators, both in the K-12 sector as well as higher education. They've got very specific areas, configurations actually for K-12 and also higher education. So there's 2 important links there. If you're an admin, you probably should bookmark that, but we will have that those slides sent over to you. And pretty much that's about all I've got. And let's see if there's been any questions that actually on the chat there.
Jerry, you've mentioned a whole lot of links. Now, are you able to provide this deck of slides as a link so people can go into those links?
Actually, yeah. And I wasn't sure if we were actually going to be sending that as part of the wrap up, but the slides, everything I've got on the slides here has got all the links, and that's the summary that we can send out.
So do you have a view only link of that deck that can be put into the chat?
Yeah, actually, I think I have generated it. Let me have a look.
And for those of you who are watching the recording, if you've registered for this session, you'll be emailed the link, because you won't see the chat, obviously.
I think we might have to just send them as part of the actual wrap-up email, Tim, because I've got so many screens open right now.
Sure. All right, so we'll stop the recording right just before it's the time. There's no extra questions, but if there are any last-minute questions, throw them in the chat now, and then we'll stop the recording. Maybe hang around for a couple of minutes after we stop the recording. Those people watching the recording, we're going to endeavour to get you to, if you've registered, then you'll get the link. Notice the QR codes that Jerry's put in now. Don't worry about the first one. That's more of a K-12 teachers resource. But the second one, if this is your final and last session, because most of you probably aren't interested in all the other stuff we're doing because you're from an IT admin background, feel free to click to scan the feedback form, the second QR code there, so that we can get some feedback from you, because we're only encouraging you to do that feedback form once, and that's at the end of your last session today. And if this is your last session today, please go ahead and scan that QR code for the feedback. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and thank you, Jerry, very much for all of your help and for putting all that together. and we look forward to catching up with some of you in the near future face to face. All the best. Bye-bye.